Tentus Nav and Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on Werewolf the Apocalypse in the World of Darkness. Well, where we last left off, we were talking about rites. Today we're going to dive deeper into the rites, and we're also going to go over most of the types of rites you can do. But let's start with a little bit more information about using rites. Because the fact is, if you have participated in a rite, but you do not know that rite, you particularly did not learn it, you may still attempt that rite. Now, unfortunately, this is seen as a sort of affront to Garu tradition, but should you choose to attempt to use it, you can do that rite with a difficulty increased by 3, and any gnosis cost doubled. Elders that know that you've done this see this as just a super insult to all the traditions that there is. So there's the possibility that if you do this, you will lose both honor and wisdom when it comes to interacting with your tribe in particular. So your renown may take a hit for doing this, especially if someone knows you've done it. But if you really needed to, you could use a rite that you have not learned using this technique. Now, as I talked about earlier, in an earlier episode, auspice is one of the things that ties directly into the rites you know. Depending on your auspice, you are seen to either learn certain types of rites, maybe not learn rites at all, or the possibility, which is very important, there are 2 auspices which are seen as being natural rite masters and therefore should learn the most amounts of rites. Granted, it is important to note here that not all Garu learn rites, and is not seen as something that is completely necessary. It is up to the individual whether they learn rites or not, or find it important to them, and the rites that they learn are considered important to them. But generally speaking, you will be encouraged based on your auspices to learn certain rites, or to learn yourself into a certain role. Theurge and Philodoxes are those that are encouraged to be, of course, rite masters. They are seen as being 2 auspices which are traditionally those. So it is very rare that a Theurge or a Philodox does not learn at least a few rites that would be considered them rite masters, or be able to use them in this case. If they don't do that, they're seen as being very unusual for their auspices. And again, this isn't to say that other auspices not learn a rite or a rite. Other auspices sometimes are considered having certain types of rites under their purview that they usually learn a few of. Again, up to the individual and the situation that they're in, they could possibly learn from other types of rites that are outside the normal types of rites they're purview to, at least when it's looked upon Garu society. The society here, combined with their auspice, is really determining who learns what rites a lot of times. It's not a standard, as I'm saying still, but traditionally being a very important word most of the time to Garu society, those are the ones that learn them. Ragabound and Ahun are actually encouraged not to learn rites unless they are absolutely required by them. They are encouraged to avoid them. Because remember, when you are learning a rite, you are basically putting your position of being a rite master to that rite. So those are 2 auspices basically said, like, don't bother. Now, this isn't to say minor rites aren't something that a lot of auspices learn. Minor rites tend to be something that's spread out. And any auspice can learn mystic rites, because mystic rites, as I talk about, are the ones that are more individual. So you can see there are 2 types of rites that traditionally many do learn in comparison to the other types. And then after that, we have to look to auspices to see what kind of rites are more traditional to your auspice. And remember, it'll really be up to your individual pack to sort of encourage you to go different directions when it comes to learning your auspices and the kind of elders you can connect with. There are elders that are more strict to tradition than others. They're always going to have a level of strictness to tradition, but there might be one that could be convinced of a very easy reason in comparison to a very more difficult reason to teach you a rite that's normally outside of your purview. If you come up with a good excuse, depending on the individual, that excuse might be better than others, but you can possibly get that. Rites of Accord are all about the Garu's bond and connection with Gaia itself, to renew this bond, to keep it strong between both the Garu and Gaia itself. These are usually made using some kind of item that has not either been touched by the worm or by man itself. Something like a branch from a pristine forest deep far away from where man would ever come. The difficulty is traditionally 7, though each rite may vary, and the Rite Master will roll Charisma plus Rite. Now, rites of Cairn are basically those that affirm these sacred spots to refresh them, renew them, to continue to connect them with Gaia, to keep these cairns alive. Cairns are an important part because they are sanctuaries for the Garou in amongst the wars, the battles that they have. And using these rites, you keep them strong and keep these connections fresh with Gaia. Without them, the connection would most likely fade and the strength at this location would disappear entirely, basically not allowing the Garou to rest between fights. Now, the dice pools vary from various rites of Cairn, but it is always important to note that the total dice you can actually roll can never be more than the Rite Master's Gnosis. So the Rite Master's Gnosis will determine the max amount of dice, regardless of the dice pool. Traditionally, it will be 7, though each rite will again determine the individual difficulty for that. Rites of death are used to honor the dead, but also to honor the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. They're really made to reduce some of the fear and the grief that can happen in the other Garou when there's an important member lost. This will be a Charisma plus Rites check with a difficulty of 8 minus the rank of the individual. The more powerful the individual was when they passed away, the easier it is to nick these rites. Now, a mystic rite, of course, is traditionally one that connects a Garou to the Umbra or a spiritual being. These are most often the rites that are done with an individual, as I said earlier. If you are rolling this, you will roll your Wits plus Ritual, and the difficulty is basically 7, again, unless stated under specific ritual. Punishment rites are those made to, of course, punish those that have transgressed against Gaia. These are usually used in more extreme circumstances where either the crime or the transgression that has been is very powerful, or if some other kind of lesser punishment was unable to correct their nature. It is made to reaffirm that the individual is not more important than the group, that usually it strengthens the tribe and the pack, that individuals are members of those rather being on their own, and their own decisions are not as important. It will be complete Charisma plus Ritual roll, and it will have a difficulty of 7 as a base, depending once again on the specific rite. If a punishment rite is said to fail, then it is said that Gaia believes that whatever crime that was committed was not worthy of this punishment. Basically, they hadn't transgressed enough to deserve this punishment. Now, renown rites are basically made there to praise great accomplishments of an individual Garou, or to expound that they have a new station within the tribe or pack, generally within the society. These are going to be Charisma plus Ritual with a base difficulty of 6, dependent once again on the rite. But that's it for today. I first talked about using a rite that you don't know. If you've been a participating member in it, you can actually attempt to use it. It's very difficult, it has more of a cost, and it spits in the face of tradition. Elders hate when you do that. But if need be, you could actually do that. If you have a good enough reason, there is a possibility that they could forgive you. But it would have to be a really good reason. It really would have to be. Otherwise, it's just an insult. I then talked about the connection between rites and auspices. That really, traditionally, it's tradition of the Garou which determine what rites an auspice knows, more than actually the auspice is required to know these. Their tradition says you should know that, but really you could learn any rites. There are some rites, like the minor ones and the mystic ones, that anyone learn. Others, bound by your auspice, by the society that's going to teach you. I then moved on and started talking about the various types of rites, and I went over most of them, including what these rites represent, and the basic rules for using them, the basic system for using them. Each of them has their own place within Garou society, and it is important to know about these places, because you might have to know a few rites of your own in order to enact them. In the next episode, I'm going to finish up talking with the last few types of rites and move into talking about renown. Basically, what you're using to measure your station within Garou society. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until next time, I bid you farewell.